Good afternoon, everyone. Today we are going to start with the topic that is fibrinolytics and the antiplatelet drugs. So, first of all, we are going to see what is fibrinolytics, and then we will study about the antiplatelet agents. Okay. So, fibrinolysis it refers to the process of fibrin digestion which is carried out by fibrin specific proteases, that is plasmin. Okay, so fibrinolytic system, it is similar to that of the coagulation system in that the precursor form of the serine protease plasmin, it circulates in inactive form as a plasminogen. So similarly, in coagulation system it is fibrinogen which gets converted to the fibrin. So in case of the system that causes lysis of the fibrin threads, it is the plasmin that causes lysis of it. Okay, so in response to injury, endothelial cells they synthesize and they release tissue plasminogen activator, that is abbreviated as TPA, which converts plasminogen to the plasmin. Okay, so regulation of the fibrinolytic system is useful in the therapeutics. So, in certain conditions, we need the drugs that cause the fibrinolysis because sometimes not always the coagulation of blood is necessary, but sometimes it is unnecessarily activated. Okay, so in that case, we need to use certain drugs that will promote or that will activate this fibrinolytic system, that is activation of the plasmin. Okay, so increased fibrinolysis, it is effective therapy for the thrombotic diseases. So the thrombotic diseases are the ones in which the there is formation of a thrombus. Thrombus is platelet plug. Okay, or the coagulation of the blood takes place. So the drugs which we are going to study under this, that is the first one is tissue plasminogen activator, second one is urokinase, and the third one is the streptokinase. So all of these drugs they activate the fibrinolytic system. So ultimate function these drugs play is to activate the that or to convert the plasminogen into the plasmin. Okay, so in this flow chart you can actually see the thing. So it is a plasminogen which is the inactive serine proteases, it gets converted to the plasmin. So for the activation or for the conversion of plasminogen to the plasmin, what is necessary is we require a blood activator. Okay, so this blood activator we get from the blood pro activator, which the conversion of which it happens in presence of a certain stimuli. Okay, so when we are talking about the drugs, the TPA, that is tissue plasminogen activator as a drug, and the urokinase, they directly promote the conversion of plasminogen to the plasmin. When we talk about streptokinase, it requires a pro-activator to be combined to form the activator. This activator is responsible for conversion of plasminogen into the plasmin. So thus the plasmin which is formed, it causes conversion of or breakdown of fibrinogen into the fibrinogen degradation products. Okay, so if the fibrinogen has been converted to the fibrin clot in presence of thrombin and the factor 13, this fibrin clot it is then break down into the fibrin degradation products and the D dimer in presence of the plasmin. Okay, so there are other drugs also that inhibit this conversion of plasminogen into the plasmin. that is the anti-activators we have, and we have a certain drug that is the aminocaproic acid. Okay, so these drugs, they are in certain cases they are required to be given so that the clotting will happen. Okay, so these drugs, they will be preferred in the conditions where there is problem in the coagulation process. Okay, so aminocaproic acid will find its use in those conditions. Okay, so next is the let's start with fibrinolytic or the thrombolytic drugs. Remember this very clearly, that these drugs are also known as the thrombolytic drugs. Okay, so thrombolytic drugs, they cause lysis of the formed clots in both arteries and veins and re-establish tissue perfusion. So before we actually go for study these drugs, let's first of all understand the difference between the clots which get formed in the arteries and clots which get formed in the veins. Okay, so the clots which are there in the arteries, they are mainly made up of the platelets, and the clots which are formed in the veins, they are mainly made up of the RBCs. Okay, fibrin thread will be the common thing in between these two clots, but the composition of the clot is different. In veins, it is made up of RBCs, and there will be very few platelets in that particular clot. Okay, so mechanism of action of these drugs, very simple. They are the plasminogen activators. All of them, they are the plasminogen activators. So by activating plasminogen, they convert it into the form that is plasmin, and this plasmin is responsible for the breakdown of the fibrinogen as well as of the fibrin thread, which is holding the platelets together. Okay, so the ideal thrombolytic agent is the one that can be administered intravenously to produce clot selective fibrinolysis without activating plasminogen to the plasmin in plasma. Okay, so too much of plasma over here. So what the ideal characteristic a thrombolytic agent should have is that we have to administer it intravenously. It is not to be given by the oral route, and when it is given intravenously, what it should do, it should produce clot selective fibrinolysis. Okay, so only it should activate, or only it should affect the clots wherever they are formed. It should not it should not act on the fibrinogen which is in inactive state, and it is circulating through the blood. Okay, it should only act onto the clots. Okay, so older, that is the first generation thrombolytic agents, they are not clot selective. Okay, and as they are not clot selective, they have appreciable systemic fibrinogenolysis, which is accompanies successful clot lysis. Okay, so it has other effects also, that is uh, it degrades the fibrinogen which is circulating in the body, as well as it causes lysis of the clot. Okay, so this other first effect, that is systemic fibrinogenolysis, it is not a wanted effect, it is an unwanted effect of these drugs. So newer drugs, that is the second generation drug, they bind to the fibrin and they activate fibrinolysis more than fibrinogenolysis. So these second generation drugs, they are more clot specific drugs. Okay, and the third generation drugs, they have improved fibrin specificity and pharmacokinetic properties. So third generation drug, they are like advancements that are done with the second generation drugs. Okay, so pharmacological actions and the clinical uses of this drug. So the thrombolytic drugs, they are indicated for management of severe pulmonary embolism, deep vein thrombosis, and the arterial thromboembolism, and are important therapy for after myocardial infarction and acute ischemic stroke. So the thrombolysis it must be accomplished quickly after myocardial or cerebral infarction since clots become more difficult to lyse as they age. Okay. So recanalization after approximately 6 hours provides diminishing benefit to the infarcted area. Okay, so recanalization is like opening up that particular occluded artery. Okay, so incidence of rethrombosis and reinfarction is greater when thrombolytic drugs with shorter plasma half-lives are used. So we have to prefer the drugs which will have longer plasma half-lives to avoid incidence of rethrombosis and reinfarction. Concurrent administration with heparin, which is followed by the warfarin, we have studied both of these drugs. They are the anticoagulant. The first one is intravenous and the second one is the oral, as well as the antiplatelet drugs, which we are going to study in next topic, is advocated to reduce the re-occlusion. Occlusion is like obstruction to the flow. Okay, obstruction to the flow of fluid, or in this case it is blood. Okay, so adverse effects of these drugs, that is principal adverse effect is bleeding due to fibrinogenolysis or the fibrinolysis at the site of vascular injury. Second is hypofibrinogenemia, that is decreased levels of the fibrinogen in the blood. Okay, so there is less incidence of the fibrinogenolysis with second and third generation drugs, but bleeding occurs with similar incidence for all agents. Okay, so life threatening intracranial bleeding may necessitate stoppage of the therapy, administration of whole blood, platelets, or fresh frozen plasma, protamine if heparin is present, and an antifibrinolytic drug, which is aminocaproic acid. Okay, so these drugs can be given in case of intracranial bleeding. Okay, so contraindications in which condition we should not use this drug, that is there are two types of contraindication. First one is the absolute and second one is the relative. So absolute contraindication they include when there is active bleeding, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, it may cause trauma to the thorax. Okay, so intracranial trauma, vascular disease and cancer. So in such condition we must avoid giving these drugs. So relative contraindications means what? Case to case basis we can decide upon the use of these particular drugs. So these include the uncontrolled hypertension, then earlier central venous system surgery, and any known bleeding risk. Okay, so the classification of the fibrinolytic agents, so we have the first generation which contains streptokinase and urokinase, and the second and third generation fibrinolytic agents they include the T-type plasminogen activator, that is alteplase, then we have retiplase and the tenecteplase. Okay, so you may find some other drugs also under second and third generation. You can refer to these drugs from the books like KD Tripathi, or you can find these drugs in the Satoskar also. Okay, so first generation drugs, the streptokinase, it is a protein but not an enzyme in itself, which is very important sentence related to this drug. It is synthesized by the streptococci, a type of bacilli cocci that combines with the proactivator plasminogen. Okay, so this enzymatic complex, what it does, it catalyzes the conversion of inactive plasminogen to the active plasmin. So we have next drug, that is urokinase. It is a human enzyme which is synthesized by the kidney that directly converts plasminogen to active plasmin. Okay, so what is to be remembered in this case is that the step there is difference between the urokinase and the streptokinase. For the action of the streptokinase, it requires a pro-activator. Okay, but in case of urokinase, it doesn't require any pro-activator. By itself, it is like an enzyme only. By itself, it converts plasminogen to the plasmin. So if you think that which one is the better out of these two, it is the urokinase, because it is an enzyme only, and the streptokinase, it is a protein. Okay, so plasmin itself, it cannot be used directly. Why? Because naturally occurring inhibitors are there in the blood, which prevents its effect. So absence of inhibitors for the urokinase and the streptokinase proactivator complex, it permits their use clinically. Okay, so plasmin formed inside a thrombus by these activators is protected from plasma antiplasmins. This allows it to lyse the thrombus from within. So where is the location, or where exactly it produces the plasmin? It produces the plasmin inside the clot. And as the antiplasmins in the plasma cannot interact with this plasmin, that's why this plasmin is protected, and it degrades the clot from within. Okay, so next is the second generation fibrinolytics. So plasminogen can also be activated endogenously by tissue plasminogen activators, that is TPS. So these activators, they preferentially activate plasminogen that is bound to fibrin, which in theory confines fibrinolysis to the formed thrombus and avoids systemic activation. Okay, so recombinant human tissue plasminogen activator is manufactured as Altiplase. Okay, so next is third generation of fibrinolytics. We have Retiplase, Tenecteplase. So Retiplase is another recombinant human tissue plasminogen activator from which several amino acid sequences have been deleted. So more it has been made more specific towards the clot only. It doesn't cause the fibrinogenolysis. So the tenecteplase, it is mutant form of the tissue plasminogen activator, which has longer half life, which is a wanted characteristic of a fibrinolytic agent. And also it can be given as an intravenous bolus. Okay, so the retiplase and the tenecteplase are as effective as the altiplase, and they have simpler dosing schemes because of their longer half lives. So there are very less chances of rethrombosis and reinfarction. Okay, so next category of drugs, that is the antiplatelet agents. So as per the name suggests, they act against the platelets. Okay, so platelets, we have studied that in that coagulation process, that whenever there is tissue injury, the collagen fiber is exposed, and when these platelets, they come in contact with these collagen fibers, there increases the stickiness of these platelets. And because of this stickiness of these platelets, they aggregate. Okay, so also these platelet, they release variety of chemicals, and the most important of them, that is thromboxane A2 and the ADP. And these thromboxane A2 and the ADP, they are responsible for the increase in the stickiness of these platelets. In normal cases, the platelets, they are not, their wall is not sticky at all, because of certain factors which are released by the endothelium, like the nitric oxide and the prostacyclin, that is PGI2. And this actually causes uh, decrease in coagulity of the blood. Okay, so there are two factors. One factor, it promotes aggregation, and another factor, it actually promotes the or it opposes the aggregation. So the factors that promote the aggregation, it includes the TXA2, that is thromboxane A2 and the ADP. And the second category of factors which opposes aggregation, it is the PGI2, that is prostacyclin, and the nitric oxide. So usually there is a balance or equilibrium between these two factors in normal cases. That's why platelets are flowing freely through the blood vessel. But when this balance between the factors that promote aggregation and factors that oppose aggregation, when it becomes abnormal or imbalance, it results into the coagulation of the blood. Okay, so the factors that promote aggregation, they become dominant, and the factors that oppose the aggregation, they become recessive. Okay, and thus it leads to the coagulation. So these antiplatelet agents, they actually uh, bring this abnormality of the balance uh, in normal condition. That means they restore this balance between these two factors. Okay, so let's see the platelet. Its function is regulated by three category of substances. The first group, it consists of agents which are generated outside the platelet and that interact with the platelet membrane receptors. So examples of it, that is catecholamine, collagen, thrombin, and the prostacyclin. Okay, then second category of substances include the agents which are generated within the platelets and that interact with the membrane receptor. An example of it, it is ADP, that is adenosine diphosphate. Then we have the prostaglandin D2, that is PGD2. Then we have PGE2 and the serotonin. Okay, so we will study about its function in detail when we will study about autocods. Okay, then third group of agents, it includes the agents which are generated within the platelet and that act within the platelet only. They don't get released and act on the receptor. Instead, they act within the platelets only. So they include the prostaglandin endoperoxides and the thromboxane A2, then cyclic nucleotides, that is CAMP, and the CGMP, and the calcium ion. Okay, so the classification of the drugs which act as antiplatelet agents, they include the first class, that is inhibition of the prostaglandin synthesis. We have the example, that is aspirin. Second drug is inhibition of ADP induced platelet aggregation. The example of drugs, that is clopidogrel, prasugrel, and the ticlopidine. Then third category of drugs, that is thrombin receptor inhibitor. We have the example, that is vorapaxar. Then we have next drugs, that is blockade of glycoprotein 2B 3A, that a receptor on the platelet. The example is apiximab, then tirofibam, and the eptifibatide. Okay, and the additional antiplatelet drugs we have, that is dipyridamole and cilostazol. Okay, so this dipyridamole, its mechanism of action is that it inhibits the phosphodiesterase enzyme. So let's see the first one, that is the aspirin. This is the diagram which shows the various factors which are acting up in the uh, platelet aggregation and formation of clot system. Okay, so we have the GP1A receptors which are shown over here, which interact with the collagen. We have the GP1B receptor which interact with von Willebrand factor. Then we have GP2B and the 3A receptor which which is a type of integrin which causes or which connects one platelet with the another. We have the various substances released by the platelet which include the ADP, then TXA2 and the 5-HT, which promotes the uh, aggregation of the platelets. Okay, so this we have over here coagulation cascade. We have intrinsic and extrinsic pathway, which leads to activation of factor 10, which converts prothrombin to the thrombin, and this thrombin has direct effect onto the aggregation of the platelet. That means it promotes the aggregation of the platelets, and this thrombin also responsible for the conversion of fibrinogen to the fibrin, which holds these aggregated platelets together in one place. Okay, and we have the PGI2, that is prostacyclin, which is released from the endothelial cells, which have negative effect onto the aggregation of the platelets. But in case of the tissue injury, its effect is minimized, and the effect of the platelet aggregators, it is maximized. Okay, so this particular diagram, it shows various sites of action of the various drugs which we have just mentioned. Okay, so you can see there is plaque disruption, which exposes the collagen, which causes platelet adhesion and secretion of various substances, and also the von Willebrand factor, it is released, it causes this or promotes platelet adhesion and secretion, which in presence of COX-1 forms the TXA2, and we have the release of the ADP, which promotes the platelet recruitment and activation. So it leads to the activation of the glycoprotein, that is glycoprotein 2b and 3a. So it leads to ultimately the platelet aggregation. So the aspirin, it blocks the formation of the TXA2. The ticlopidine, clopidogrel, prasugrel, cangrelor, then ticagrelor, they inhibit binding of the ADP to its receptor. Then this glycoprotein 2b and 3a glycoproteins, their function or these receptors are blocked by the apixaban, then eptifibatide and the tirofiban. Then we have the vorapaxar, which inhibits the platelet aggregating effect of the thrombin. Okay, so we have the first drug, that is the aspirin. So the prostaglandin thromboxane A2 is an arachidonate product that causes platelets to change shape, release their granules and aggregate. So the aspirin inhibits synthesis of the thromboxane A2 by irreversible acetylation of the enzyme, that is cyclooxygenase. So you should have this question in your mind, that thromboxane A2 and the PGI2, that is prostacyclin, both of these, they get formed from the arachidonic acid only. One of it, it has aggregating effect, other of it, it has it opposes the aggregation. We want PGI2 to remain over there, but we don't want TXA2. That is the role, or that is the objective of these drugs. Then why we are giving this aspirin? Because in both of the cases, or in formation of both of the things, that is TXA2 and PGI2, what we require is the COX enzyme. Okay, then by inhibiting this COX enzyme, we are actually inhibiting the synthesis of both, that is the TXA2 and the PGI2. Then why aspirin is given in this case? The reason to it, that the aspirin, it has it doesn't act, or it doesn't inhibits the synthesis of the PGI2 in the concentrations which are used as it as the antiplatelet agent. So the dose we use, it doesn't inhibit the COX enzyme which is there in the endothelial cell. So that's why the aspirin, it only inhibits the formation of TXA2 and not that of the PGI2. Okay, so because platelets, they do not synthesize new proteins, the action of aspirin on platelet COX-1 is permanent and it lasts for the lifetime of the platelet, that is 7 to 10 days. So thus repeated doses of the aspirin, it produce a cumulative effect on the platelet function. Okay. So next is clopidogrel. Clopidogrel is thiionopyridine prodrug which inhibits the receptor, that is P2Y12. Okay, so P2Y12, it is a purinergic drug for which the ligand is, or the agonist is, the ADP. Okay, so the platelets, they contain two types of purinergic receptor, that is P2Y1 and the P2Y12. Both of these, they are the G protein coupled receptors for the ligand, that is ADP. So the ADP, it activates the platelet P2Y1 receptor which is coupled to the G protein, that is GQ, and thus causes activation of PLC, that is phospholipase C, uh, and it further activates the IP3 DAG pathway and causes release of the calcium. Okay, and this, because of this activation of this PLC IP3 calcium pathway, it causes shape change and the aggregation of the platelets. So the P2Y12 receptor, they couple with the G protein, and when it is activated by the ADP, it causes the inhibition of the adenylyl cyclase formation. And as adenylyl cyclase formation or its activation is inhibited, there is decrease in the camp levels, and this decrease in the camp levels are actually responsible for the uh, there is responsible for the aggregation of the platelets. You should able to correlate what is the role of the camp and that of the aggregation. Whenever there is increase in the camp levels, uh, there is uh, there is inhibition of the platelet aggregation, and whenever there is decrease in the intracellular camp levels, there is increase in aggregation. Let me repeat: when there is increase in intracellular camp levels, there is decrease in aggregation. So it is inversely proportional, camp levels and the aggregation. And whenever there is decrease in the camp levels intracellularly, there is increase in platelet aggregation. So when ADP binds to the receptor, that is P2Y12, there is decrease in the camp levels, and thereby there is increase in the platelet aggregation. So clopidogrel, being a inhibitor of P2Y12 receptor, it actually inhibits the platelet aggregation. Okay, so both of these receptors, they are stimulated to result in maximal platelet activation. Okay, so the clopidogrel is in irreversible inhibitor of P2Y12. So it has largely replaced ticlopidine because clopidogrel is more potent and it is less toxic, with thrombocytopenia and leukopenia occurring only rarely. Clopidogrel is a prodrug which requires metabolic activation in the liver, and this activation, it is carried out in presence of enzyme, that is CYP2C19. Okay, so therefore it has slow onset of action. So also it has slow offset of action because of its irreversible effect on the P2Y12. Offset of action means what? It will take some time to produce its effect. Once the effect is produced, to dissociate from the receptor or to stop the action, it will also take some time. Okay, so the metabolic activation of the clopidogrel, it can be affected by the polymorphism in the CYP2C19, which results in reduced or absent CYP2C19 activity. So These polymorphisms they contribute to variable effect of the clopidogrel on ADP induced platelet aggregation. Okay, so the therapeutic uses of the clopidogrel they include it is somewhat better than aspirin for secondary prevention of the stroke, and the combination of the clopidogrel plus aspirin is superior to aspirin alone for prevention of recurrent ischemia in patients with unstable angina. So clopidogrel you will always find in combination with that of the aspirin. Okay, so the FDA approved indication for the clopidogrel are to reduce the rate of stroke, myocardial infarction, and the death in patients with recent myocardial infarction or stroke, establish peripheral artery disease, and or the acute coronary syndrome in which we can use the clopidogrel. So the adverse effect they include increases the risk of bleeding, particularly when combined with aspirin or an anticoagulant. Thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura can occur, but it is a rare condition. So the drug interactions of it, that is CYP2 C19 inhibition by proton pump inhibitors. Examples of this drug that is omeprazole, lansoprazole, lansoprazole, then pantoprazole. It may reduce conversion to the active metabolite of the clopidogrel, which may contribute to the lower efficacy of clopidogrel when co-administered with a proton pump inhibitor. Okay, so these proton pump inhibitors they are used in treatment of the peptic ulcer disease. So in such cases, we should not combine the drug that is clopidogrel with these drugs that is PPIs. Okay, so rest of the drugs from the antiplatelet category we will study in next lecture. That's all from my side. Thank you.